and we can't really just ignore the three-dimensional component of it. And for the work I'm going to show you, I actually work on an earthquake sequence that was triggered by another earthquake very, very far away. And so not only do I have a three-dimensional problem, but I also have a four-dimensional problem because time is also another component of it. So this is a pretty typical way that you'll see seismologists display earthquakes. So to orient you, on the top, we have that 2D map projection. And so right here, this black line is the trench. You've got the incoming plate with the overriding plate. I've got some triangles on here. Those are my different seismometers. I've got ocean bottom seismometers in the inverted triangles and some land-based stations right here along the Marianas Island arc in the Western Pacific. And these dots here represent different earthquakes. And so on the bottom, you also have a depth slice or a cross section. And this shows you've got a slab surface right here, and you've got the different depths of your earthquakes here. But this is going to summarize this entire lateral extent. And so when you're trying to differentiate a cluster, say up here, you can't really differentiate it that well up here. And so like I said, I work with triggered earthquakes, so there's a temporal aspect to it. So what we have right here is me trying to explain how that temporal aspect works. So this left figure here is 36 hours of events before our triggering event. And then this figure over here is the 36 hours after the triggering event. And as well, I wanted to point out, I do have some red dots where I tried to differentiate certain events that happened within the first hour after the event happened. And so you can see there's a cluster up the top here, and this is the one that I want to point out. But these maps, I'd have to make several panes of them if I wanted to show you kind of a time sequence, and that gets kind of cumbersome. So while we do pretty good to show our in-space correlations, it's not really great for in-time. So one way we can think about in time is when we look at the seismograms themselves. And so these are both the same station showing vertical displacement in the same station. And on the top, I have a low frequency filter on that. And that low frequency filter is going to illuminate that teleseismic event coming from a distance of 5,000 kilometers away. And so by the time it's reached my station, it will have lost all that high frequency energy. And so you just see this low frequency kind of a looser wiggle to it. And when I look at that same hour and a half, the same station, everything's the same, and filter it at a higher frequency, what I can see is these events are events that are happening in my local area because they have not lost that high frequency energy. And so what I want to point you to is this is my S wave arrival for the teleseismic earthquake with my Rayleigh wave here. And then right after that event, it'll go, you see a burst of different earthquakes here. And so this does a good example or a good job of trying to explain the temporal correlation between these two things, but we really don't know where these things are. We'd have to locate them, or I'd have to tell you. It doesn't really do a good job visualizing it. And so we're thinking about not only communicating it to other scientists, but communicating it to classrooms and the public. This is a little bit hard to grasp. So the Fawcett Laboratory, the Fawcett Laboratory at Washington University has been developing some applications with augmented reality. And this is very similar to virtual reality, but you're able to see through and see it's like kind of a mixed reality. And so this way you kind of have like a hologram in front of you. And what's nice about this is a little more intuitive, and you can use it to share your experience with other people in the classroom or in a public setting. So here I have my collaborator, Martin Pratt, and he has this kind of visor-looking thing on there. That is the Microsoft Hololens, which helps with this holographic presentation. So when it kind of zooms back out, you'll see this purple thing here. That is that subducting slab. That's the Mariana slab there. And then as he's playing this temporally back and forth, you can see the earthquakes pop up. And if we had sound, you can actually hear sound to this. So you'll hear the earthquakes kind of arriving. So let's play one more time. So here you also got your seismic stations on the top. And so you see the earthquake starting to pop up, and he can look around that cluster, and he can really see that cluster highlight right there. And so because getting a bunch of these HoloLenses can be pretty expensive and maybe a barrier, they've also worked to, right here, Hannah has the HoloLens on, but Martin's actually recording this and interacting with it with an iPhone. And so you can have iPhones and Androids actually sync up together. So they're seeing the same things. You could have a professor who is controlling the animations, etc. And you can have students be able to actually explore a subduction zone together. And so here in this one, you can actually see the two events that triggered my earthquakes over there in the distance. So you could literally walk from those events over to the Mariana subduction zone. You see the events now. He's colored them in different colors to indicate before and after the triggering event as well. And so she can interact and play through these events, and he's able to watch what she's doing. And so this is something actually you guys can do here. The Fawcett Laboratory has released 2 iPhone apps. Geo Explorer, they also use this for, they use high resolution photogrammetry to take pictures of outcrops. So you can bring those field trips into the lab. So the Geo Explorer has a bunch of outcrops, not only from Earth, but you can walk on Mars, you can walk on the moon as well. And then Seismicity AR is similar to this one, except for it's using the USGS's earthquake catalog. So you can walk around the USGS's earthquakes just like Hannah is right here. And so I highly recommend checking out virtualplanet.wustel.edu, the URL down at the end. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me on Twitter, Seismo Amanda, anytime. And thank you.